Hey, it's Spence from LaunchFlows.com. I wanted to show you something before I take off for about a week for a little holiday trip. This is on our patterns.launchflows.com, and this represents something that I'm putting together. It doesn't take a lot of detective work to figure out for why, but in February we're going to be doing a little deal with a well-known deal site. And I wanted to show you how you can actually use LaunchFlows for creating the very same mechanism that we're using. Now, this is interesting to me because although there are some codes out there that will allow you to do this with easy digital downloads, I could not find a way to do this easily out of the box with WooCommerce. And so this is a homebrew setup that is using essentially LaunchFlows, WPFusion, Fluent CRM, and Gutenberg blocks to make a redemption checkout. And this is interesting because there are typically for this site what's called stacking of codes. You get 1, 2, or 3 codes allowing you to buy each tier or each type of product. So it's kind of like if you went to Las Vegas, put in 1 token or 2 tokens or 3 tokens, and they happen concurrently. In order to make this happen, I just simply mix together Gutenberg, LaunchFlows, the LaunchFlows capabilities of WooCommerce, WPFusion ability to mix and match the tags to show things, and then I used, in this case, Fluent CRM in order to store the tags. You could have used any other CRM, but again, I like Fluent CRMs for its ability to work in this setup. Some of this stuff is dumbed down a little bit, if you will, because I wanted to keep it simple. So it's not going to send you to the My Account area. It's a test site, so you can use it, but don't expect to get emails. And also the checkout does not show credit cards. I'm just using cash or cash on delivery. But the basic mechanism is the same. So when you come to the site, you need to register first and you need to redeem your first code. This is because we need to explain to somebody who is sent from the deal site. And by the way, this would work equally well if it was your own deal site. In other words, if you just wanted to sell tokens to your products and you had a library of different products somebody could get, this is an ideal mechanism because Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, they all allow you to basically use any kind of mechanism to sell a code. WooCommerce allows you to import those codes to use as the means for getting 100% discount. And as you'll see in a second, LaunchFlows allows you to say that this product can only be bought by itself. So here we go. First thing we need to do is register. So when they click the first time, it adds the 5 site and registration option. In other words, you always have to get registered and get the first 5 sites. Let's put in test buyer 1 at labsecrets.com. And then in this event, in order to get rid of the $100 cost, we're going to use Deal Doggo, and you can do that as well. And we're using the standard WooCommerce mechanism, but it's connected in such a way that it does not only the removal, but it allows the thing to move forward to the next step. So we go ahead and redeem the code. Now in the real site, you'll see, if you buy it during that time, that it'll take you to your My Account area to review what you just got and also to show you the LaunchFlows plugin. Here, I'm just keeping us on the site. But what I want you to see is 2 things are different. First of all, now that I've redeemed the first token, the only product that's showing is the second token. And the other thing is I put in an indicator here that allows you to see that they've already redeemed the first of the 3 tokens. So it's kind of a really welcoming way to let somebody start the process and just keep redeeming. And yet it's a full-blown WooCommerce checkout using very simple components. So let's go ahead and redeem the second code, which loads it into the checkout experience. And again, I'll just do Deal Doggo because I've set that coupon in this case to be perpetual. In the real site, you have to use a unique coupon or a unique redemption code every time. Notice here, I can redeem it again and it moves me forward in the process. So now I am only showing the ability to get to the 3rd code, and you see that I have the first site and I have the first redemption and the second redemption shown as having already been purchased. And let's do the final 3rd one. And again, Deal Doggo. And by the way, it's worth mentioning, somebody could, if that's what your business model allows, pay with cash here. So in other words, this is an interesting way where you can also do it just for like a store credit mechanism. You can sell store credits that give a certain amount of discount, whether it's a percentage or a dollar amount. And if somebody doesn't happen to use them, well, they can just go ahead and pay the difference in cash or with a credit card. Kind of defeats the purpose of this redemption, but it's just showing you can do it. And so when we redeem this one, the process is finalized. And we've got 5 sites, 10 sites, unlimited sites. Now, what's interesting is what happens on the back end. So on the front end, the user experience is amazing and clean and simple. And this pretty much did everything that I needed in order to be a seller on this particular deal redemption site, as you'll see when it goes live. But I also like the fact that on the back end, it's super, super easy for you to do it. And it's worth mentioning that I'm making this pattern available to you over here, by the way, so you can just get 99% of this setup on your own. You just go to patterns.launchflows.com and you'll be able to just literally copy this pattern code and use it yourself. But the setup on the back end is what's really the magic. So if we go on the back end, I'm going to show you essentially how this works. We're using WPFusion, we're using Fluent CRM, as I mentioned, and LaunchFlows. So a couple things. Let me just run you through the basics. First of all, this is a custom post. It could be a page, a post, a lesson, even a product. In the actual deal site setup, I'm using a product. LaunchFlows lets you turn any kind of post in WordPress into its own checkout. That's really important. That's a difference between our product as a utility and the other ones as a framework. Next is I did do a custom layout here using Gutenberg, and it really is not that complicated. It's just essentially at the top I have a header row, and then I have a 2-column or a 2-section layout in the main body. On the left side, I've used a gray background, and I've used 3 buttons. Then I've sort of placed the various components of the checkout using LaunchFlows. The billing, login, and notices on the right, the order review on the left. I've used some standard heading stuff to give the steps. Then I put the coupon redemption area down here and the payment redemption or payment input at the bottom. I also created a 3-column or a 3-section setup over here, which allowed me to essentially make 3 button-looking objects. Each one of those sections, as I'll show you in a second, is protected using tags so that they only appear when you have the right tag, having bought a product. And then finally, I did in this case want to customize some of the style. Normally, I just rely upon Gutenberg, but here I really wanted to tweak some of the WooCommerce stuff. I'm including this in here, and it's just an HTML block that has a little CSS. As much as I'm hoping that Gutenberg will mature to the point where everything has exactly the granular controls, this is just a shortcut way for me to do this, but it's included inside of your setup. So even if you're not a coding person, you'll still get the benefit of it working as long as you're sticking with this model. And then finally, in the event that you were using a credit card like I do on the Real Deal site, I wanted to auto-save the credit card and I wanted to hide the additional fields. Now there's a few other tweaks that happen in the Real site, which is one of the things that I can help you with in either a personal consultation or I'm probably going to do a workshop on this one. But let me just run through really basics. For these buttons to appear sequentially, the basic logic is this. The product is a variable product. And when you purchase the first variation, which is the 5 site, you get a tag. And let's just show you what that looks like real quickly. If I go over to this button, there's an option using the block visibility plugin to enable WPFusion as the controls. And when I do that, I also say, in this case, it's a public block because I want somebody to be able to register, so they need to be able to see this even if they're not logged in. The only thing that's important is to make sure that in the event that they were logged in, that they don't already have anything. In other words, this is the thing that should show when you do not have any other tags from purchasing any of the 3 variations. If I were to go to the second option, you'll see slightly different, but basically along the same lines. We click on this, and first of all, I'm going to go to the visibility again, and I'll show you that the controls have to be enabled for WPFusion. And then when we go down here, the required tags now are slightly different. Here I'm saying you should only see the purchase or I should say redeem the second code, redeem the next 10 sites, if you've already got the tag for having done so with the first variation, the 5 site. So in other words, the visibility of the second button can only be available if you've already completed the checkout and received the tags of the first. Likewise, please do not show this button if you've already done it. So in other words, if you've already purchased the second code and gotten the second purchase of 10 sites, don't show the button. And the same is true on the third. So in other words, you can imagine where we're going here, where with the visibility, we turn it on, of course, with WPFusion. And then we also say the same thing. This should only show up if you've already completed the purchase of the product variation before it, which is the 10 site option. And don't show it if you've already finished it off. Now for these visibility controls of which thing you've already purchased, we do the same thing in reverse. We just go to the sections and we look at the heading. And when we go to visibility, you'll see the same idea. Turn on WPFusion, of course, but then in order to show the 5 site text and background, we need you to have the tag of purchasing 5 sites. Now, there's some other magic in there. I'm going to save that for the workshops or a private consultation, but let me just show you what happens on the product side of things. Here, I have created, by the way, a category that is used for all 3 variations. This gives me a lot of flexibility with the coupons. So it's important to say that there's ways you can do this, but I'm doing it with the product categories. And I made one called Deal Doggo. Then in the product itself, this is just a variable product. I did make the options or the variations virtual, but it could work for a physical product. But in this case, it's a redemption. The inventory, I said, only offer individually because I don't really, in this case, want to see the option to say how many quantity. You could turn that on if you want. There's no shipping involved. And then the attributes in this case I set up were called how many sites, 5 sites, 10 sites, unlimited sites. And that gave me the variations I needed. In each of the variations, I set them up as virtual. I put the price in. This is just random here. You'll see the price for the LaunchFlows deal when it goes live. And then, like I did for the internal buttons, I said, apply a tag when this is purchased. The tag in this case is purchased 5 sites for that variation. I said, make sure you already do not have any of the other variations been purchased. And I did the same thing here now for the 10 site, right? Give a tag of 10 sites, require that you have the 5 site tag first, and make sure that you don't already have the 10 tag. And then the same thing for the unlimited. Give them a tag of unlimited, make sure they have the 10 site tag first, make sure they don't have the unlimited tag. I also did set the default to 5 sites just so it shows something. Even though I'm not using the single product page here, it just would be nice to make sure in case somebody found their way to this page, they got the right information. And then in the actual setup, I'm going for LaunchFlows. Here, because I'm using a separate checkout page called Deal Site Redemption, I want them to be sent back to the same page. In the real site, I might be on the product page and have them come back to its own product. After they buy, here I'm keeping them on that page, but I could just as easily have sent them to the My Account area. So you can choose with LaunchFlows where somebody goes after something's added to the cart, where somebody goes after checkout. I did make this a clean sales page just because in case they ended up on the product page, I didn't want them to be confused by anything. And important also was that I set this up as a solo checkout so that only one of these products could ever be bought at a time. And also that the variations between these 3 would also act accordingly. You could only get one choice of one variation. You could never get more than one. Truthfully, these are kind of redundant because if you've got only one variation set up, you don't need solo checkout. But I did this mostly to make sure that it would get rid of any products that might be accidentally in the cart. So solo checkout with LaunchFlows sweeps the whole cart of any other products. The only one variation, make sure you only get to choose among the 3. And then finally for WPFusion, I'm giving people a generic tag just to identify them in my CRM if they've bought any variation whatsoever. That might be useful, for example, for things like abandoned cart, might be useful for things like I want to move somebody along in the process. If there's an option for an upsell and so forth, I would know in general, these are the people in my list that have already started the process of at least buying one of the variations. And that's kind of just a time saver there. So I'm not going to show you any of the actual mechanics of the CRM, but just understand that this is a really, really neat way for anybody to get started with something that, quite frankly, you would have to custom code. The reason that I started this in general was because I realized after I got involved with this deal that this particular very popular deal site mostly wants people to use an API when they're selling. And as I started to think about that, I realized it's good for those that love to custom code or that aren't using WooCommerce. But since I've already got all the mechanics here, it just made more sense to use what I've already got. Those of you who work with me know that I also happen to use for delivery of the LaunchFlows plugin, Appsero. And this is really a nice setup. I support their product and it delivers the licenses for LaunchFlows. So there was no way that I was going to go ahead and custom code something or switch to using easy digital downloads because I was already very deeply embedded into using WooCommerce. And this is just a piece of cake. So hopefully you'll enjoy this addition, a little more complex and a little more beneficial to the patterns library, but it'll also encourage you to consider using LaunchFlows for building your solutions. Because as you can see, you're just snapping together a bunch of Legos that you already have in a stack of just a few things for magic to happen. I'd love to hear your feedback. And also, if you have any questions about what we're going to be doing with the LaunchFlows product in 2022, just comment or send it to help@launchflows.com. If you're seeing this video on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Of course, we love that. And I'll see you in the new year.